I'm telling you, I hear that music and I look over for Merv Griffin to pop out here or something. Those of you who are over 45 or so know what I just said about Merv Griffin, a talk show in the 70s. And it just sounds like that. We'll dismiss the kids and go to Kids Corner. What a good group. This has been a busy week for me. I don't know about you. I was in Indiana Thursday through yesterday. There's always once a year, all the people from this region who are kind of on the pathway for ministry, for ordination. There is this 3-day event that we hold that, for better or for worse, I'm in charge of. And so I was there and then made a little hospital stop yesterday on the way home. And so anyway, hope your week has been a good one. I was just saying, the good news I have to share with you this morning, and I do have good news, is that this is a week where everyone is going to be happy. Today, tomorrow, and Tuesday, we have fall. Those of you that like fall, you'll be excited. Wednesday and Thursday, we have summer. Those of you that like summer, we'll be back there again, and then Friday winter hits. So everybody will be happy this week. So that's all that's all the hope. The other thing, just to keep you updated, there's something new that won't impact you. We are now streaming live on 3 different platforms this morning. So 3, and we'll share with some of those, live to YouTube, live to Facebook, and live to a website, and that's a little different. And if you're joining us this morning, thank you for joining us. Just send us a little note. If you want us to pray for you, send us a little prayer request. We'd love to pray for you this week. I hate sad words, at least most of the time. Some of you remember a few years ago, we had, I think it was 2012, 2014, 2017, we took 3 different mission trips to Costa Rica. And I think it was the last one to Costa Rica. We got through all security, and I don't know what happened, but as we were going to our gate, all of a sudden the guys in the uniforms came with tables and velvet ropes and all that stuff, and redid another security check by the gate, and we got a little scattered where we were going through different parts. And I was going through the line right next to this kind of petite, blonde, younger woman, and she was in tears, and I just had a sense, and I leaned over to her, and I said, I'm so sorry, but may your life be blessed by many painful goodbyes. And she kind of looked and thought and smiled, and she said, yeah, I think you're right. And so not those sad words, but there's other sad words. Our passage this morning contains some of the most tragic words that we find in Scripture, and they are sad. Remember, this letter is addressed to people who have been through a lot. As a result, they're being tempted to abandon a life of value for something the author considers far less. The author, who I think, and if this interests you at all, you can look it up and have the debate, who I think is Apollos, is writing to these people. And he's gone through all the benefits. He's gone through Jesus is greater than Moses. Jesus is greater than the angels. Jesus is your great high priest. Jesus will be a constant companion. And now he gets kind of to the climax of his argument, and he wants the people to make a decision. I'm reading in chapter 12, starting with verse 14. There we go. The author, who I think Apollo writes, he says this: make every effort to live in peace with everyone and be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many. See that no one is sexually immoral or is godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the oldest son. Afterward, as you know, when he wanted to inherit this blessing, he was rejected, even though he sought the blessing with tears. He could not change what he had done. There are a lot of instruction in this little compact scripture. The first thing that the author wants us to do is to pursue this life of peace. I like peace. Peace is good. Peace is normally silent. Peace is normally pleasant. But there are two ways to achieve peace. The first way is to simply give in and appease everyone with anything. Some of us are like that. I was listening to someone talk yesterday, and it was another professor, and he said, here's what I've done. My syllabus is 11 pages long. And I went, wow, why is it 11 pages long? He says, it's 11 pages long because it's 10 pages of me saying no. Because I know with my personality type, if someone comes in and asks me something, here's what I would do. I'd go, yes, I will. His personality is just so much to say yes, 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 that pretty soon he finds himself in an exhausted place. He said yes to everybody with everything, and pretty soon he's drained. Sometimes that's at best a short-term help. You say yes, and pretty soon you find a couple different things. You find yourself that you've stretched yourself too thin. Someone has asked you to go beyond your boundary lines, or you find out that you've kind of lost yourself in the process. Often, sometimes in our teenage years, in an effort to fit in, we say yes to everybody around us, and pretty soon we've lost our own identity. One of the things that is always humorous, and it's not every single generation of teenagers, is independent and self-expressing themselves in the same way that everybody else is doing. I can go back and we can talk about peasant blouses, bell bottoms, Sedgefield jeans, Gloria Vanderbilt, leg warmers. We can go back. Everybody goes back when they're 40 and 50 and looks at their high school pictures and says, oh my goodness, why were we wearing that? There's one other way to achieve peace, and I think that's what the author goes to. And he says, it's a good thing in life to pursue holiness. Have a very strong sense of where God wants to take you. And don't let people push you outside those boundaries. Sometimes we use the word boundaries incorrectly in our society. We use boundaries from. I need boundaries to protect me. Boundaries from, boundaries away. We want to set up a fence to keep us distant from everybody around us. And sometimes I understand why that is. But we need boundaries not to protect us from, but boundaries so that we can be used for. You will not take me beyond here so I can show you a better way. There are some of you, and we are all different. One of the things that we did, some of you remember we had the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. Some of you have taken that, and at the end of that, it kind of puts you in a little square, and it says, oh, you're an ENSJ or an INT. You have all these letters. You're this and you're that. You're either extroverted or introverted. You're either intuitive or judging. I guess judging and feeling are the two that are opposite. But here's the thing. I think there's 7 billion people on the planet, and you know how many different personality types there are? About 7 billion. Because truth be told, all of us are a mixture of extroversion and introversion, or all of us are a mixture. Even the most extroverted person here gets to the point where it's like, I love people, I love people, I love people. Okay, I'm shutting her down. I have to go process. Even the most emotionally calm person, the person who's unruffled, gets the point, and it's the next person, my fuse is going to go off, and I need to go decompress. We're all this mixture of a lot of different things. We also need to have this very, very grounded, strong sense of integrity. Integrity that goes beyond honesty. It's easy to be at peace when you can go through life not having to worry about what story you told last week. It's easier to go through life when you're wholehearted and authentic and not hiding anything. It's easy to be at peace when you are authentically being the person that God created you to be. And you have nothing to hide. And you can just interact. Holiness is complete. It's whole. It's mature. Holiness knows where you are going and allows no one to pull you away. It keeps you being the authentic person that God created you to be. I want you to know something. Sometimes I get made fun of. Rightly, correctly. I'm the person who sometimes my emotional needle doesn't jump up and down very much. One of the things that my wife is good with me is that my joke about myself is I can walk through a room with 20 people crying and not notice anybody was upset. And my wife will tap me on the shoulder and kind of mention that. Well, one of the things I did for this weekend is I took this profile where there's these 5 parts of personality, and one is neuroticism versus ultimate stability. And I want you to know that according to all the data available, that 99.98 of the population is more emotional than I am. I can't help it. And if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum, in any of these, can I tell you, God can use all of you. He needs people that are tuned in. He needs people who are less so. He needs people who are extroverted. He needs people who think deeply. He needs people who form deep friendships and one-on-ones all across the scale. Because not only do we need a life of peace, the next thing the text says is we need to be guides for those around to it. Verse 15, see to it that no one misses the grace of God. I have this funny belief, and it is foundational for me. 30 years ago, there were 40 different hills I was willing to die on. I'm down to about 3. But I'm really ready to die on these hills, and this is one of them. God's grace is available for everyone. Not just a select few, not just people that look like me, not just people that vote like me, not people from my region, none of that. God's grace is for everyone. But one thing the author wants to tell us is one of the things that stops grace. Look how he immediately turns and says, and see to it that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble. One of the things that stops grace is bitterness. When we are bitter, we do not want to reach the object of our bitter feelings. That was Jonah's issue. Jonah didn't want the Ninevites. In fact, he got a little angry. All throughout Scripture, there are people. I'm sure the early church was not really excited. Imagine that you are meeting and you get a flyer. Hey, I want to come speak at your church. Signed, Saul of Tarsus. No, thank you. We'll tear that up and put that in a circular file. All the people that sometimes when we get bitter, that stops our efforts. And the other thing is, when we get bitter, those around us notice and sometimes want no part of God. Bitterness changes me. Bitterness makes me hard. Bitterness makes me oversensitive. Bitterness narrows my viewpoints. And I know sometimes we say, but you don't know what they said to me. I'm right to feel this way. And you might be correct. Don't be bitter anyway. Here's a truth in life that I am learning. I don't think any of us learn it perfectly. It takes two people to be offended. It takes the person that said the word that probably wasn't the most wisely chosen word, but I have to be willing to be offended. And we live in a world right now that seeks to be offended. We take pride in being offended. We gain power from being offended. I heard a couple that had been married for a long time, and someone asked them, this was on Friday evening just this week, someone asked them, how has your marriage thrived so well? And she said, well, I just learned long ago that after a day, if my husband said something to me that you could take to be wrong, that you could, if you thought about it, yeah, I could be offended. Maybe I could take that in the wrong way. I've learned that whenever I have a choice, automatically assume that's not how he meant it. And always think the best. And always believe the best. And always expect the best. And not to ever get in a point where I'm looking for a reason to be offended. This, and she was talking about my home, my marriage, this is too important for me to go thinking or seeking or assuming that the worst was meant. Because if we're going to be offended, we're no longer a good guide. We need to be people that point the way. Our homes need to be homes that point the way. Our marriages need to be relationships that point the way. And before anything else, the thing that stops it is bitterness and hardness and thinking the worst. The author moves on and says, see to it that no one is sexually immoral or godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the oldest son. You remember in Genesis, sold his birthright. That is one of the most important, instructive stories of the Bible. If you remember, Isaac was the oldest, and his little brother was Jacob. And they were twins, but Isaac came out first. And so in Jewish tradition at that time, if you were the oldest son, you got a double inheritance over everybody else. I am the oldest in my family. I like that system. I wish it was still there. Which meant, and I'm only using this number because it's nice and round and we can do math. That means if my parents died with $1 million, I'd get $666,666, and my little slimy brother would get $333,333. But no, that's not our system. We all get even now. Well, if you remember, Esau was out in the field, and he came home hungry, and Jacob was kind of a mama's boy, and he was there with her, and she was cooking, and Esau said, man, I am so hungry. Give me some of that stew. And Jacob said, you can have it, but you have to surrender your birthright and give it to me so I can have the double amount instead of you. And Esau went, I don't care, deal, give me the food. That's what this is referring to. And we think, wow, how could have someone been that stupid? Except we live amongst people who commonly trade in a valuable thing for a cheap alternative. We are awash in a culture that does that. We have this idea that sin is just bad and evil, therefore we avoid it, and avoiding it becomes the goal. Our response then is to make a list. Here's a list of all the things I have to stay away from. And pretty soon, Christianity, our faith, becomes nothing but observing that list. A good conversation is just about avoiding certain bad words. Tolerance becomes just about using these right words. Doesn't matter what's on the inside as long as we go through these motions on the outside. A good marriage means just avoiding divorce. Good parenting means just getting the kids to college or everything without them killing themselves. Sin is something else. At its heart, sin is taking what was meant to be good and twisting it into something less than, something degrading, something diminishing. A desire for enough is replaced with a lust for more things. A awareness of blessings, a desire for blessings becomes an endless quest for more stuff. And then we stay in the same house for 10 years and 15 years and 20 years, and it comes time to move, and we sit there and think, how did I get all this stuff? An honest desire for non-judgmentalism, which is right, becomes a license for anything and everything. Who are you to tell me what to do? Who are you? That's completely up to me. We make trades. We trade the valuable for the cheap all the time. We trade things of value for fun. We trade long-term concerns for short-term gain. We meet people and use them instead of forming authentic relationships. We be sure that they make us better as opposed to us being sure that maybe we bless them. We spend so much on little pleasures and find that we've never saved. We parent and we act in a relationship as if nothing exists past next Tuesday. Let me give an example, and this will go both ways. Let's pretend for a second that my mom made the best meatloaf in the world. She didn't. I don't ever remember her making meatloaf. So I'm using that. But let's pretend that she did. And now I'm married, and I'm married for 2 months, and my wife makes meatloaf for me because she knows how much I like meatloaf. And I eat the meatloaf, and guess what? It's not really that good. And my wife says, "How's your meatloaf?" And I say, "You are not a good cook. It's awful." If I live the next 30 seconds, I can tell you that I will never get meatloaf cooked for me again for as long as I live. Or I could say, "You knew that Mom made me meatloaf and I loved it and you took the time. I appreciate that so much and I want you to know I love you. She's going to make meatloaf for me again. And the next time, it'll be a little better. And the time after that will be a little better. And by the time we get 2 years in, it's going to be as good as. Unless I go and tell her how bad it is, and then it won't happen. If your husband paints a room for you, or paints cabinets or something, and misses a spot, and sits there and says, "I painted cabinets for you," and the first response is, "Well, this is terrible, you missed the spot." Guess what? I bet he'll paint and he'll cover over and get that spot. But you know what he'll never do for you again? He'll never paint. Instead of coming up and giving him a big hug and kiss and saying, "Oh my goodness, you knew that was important to me. Thank you so much." One is focused on what happens 15 minutes from now, and the other one is focused on what happens 5 years from now and 10 years from now and 15 years from now. We make so many decisions for what happens in the next hour and not for what happens halfway through life. It's interesting here to me when he says, "See that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and no one is sexually immoral." I find that's interesting that the author throws a little reference to sex in here. As if it's possible. Our culture has ruined sex. And it has. It was created to be this bonding act, this loving, bonding act, which, by the way, it was also a creative act, a way that we actually share in one of God's essential qualities. And what we have done is we have taken as a culture and turned one of the endpoints, the creative act, and have turned it into, that has become the biggest problem with the act. And we've taken any love and thankfulness out of the creative aspect, instead of something that fills the family, blesses the couple, and enhances a long-term marriage, and becomes this meeting point for two people that love each other and value each other and nurture each other. We've turned it into a recreational pursuit where it is mainly one goal amongst 50 other things of lesser value. And then we wonder why we have some of the issues that we do. We have even turned it and made it into the focal point of identity, a weight that it was never meant to bear. Instead of being people that seek out and embrace the good that God's created. This high point, this wonderful point in this wonderful thing called marriage. Some things seem so close to me. I think back of friendships and neighborhoods and experiences from the past, and it seemed like it was just last week. It really does. And then to think that in just a month, sometimes hard for me to believe, I will have been married 36 years. That's amazing to me. That means almost this entirety of my life has been spent in relationship with this person. And almost every good thing has happened in relationship with this person. And my life is immensely better because of this person. Even on the days where she drives me just a little nuts. And if you think I've just said anything bad, because there's far more days where I drive her a lot nuts. A lot more days. And why do we ever think that there won't be some of those days in any kind of life? The saddest part of this is this last section where it says this: Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the oldest son, and afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected. He could bring about no change of mind, even though he sought the blessing with tears. That last sentence, he could bring about no change of mind, even though he sought the blessing with tears. These sad words are, it's too late. If you were out in let's say out west at a camp, and they say, hey, we're only serving lunch from 12 to 12:30, and you went out a little too far and you tried to get back, and you got back to the chuck wagon at 12:35, and you go, I'd like to eat. It's too late. There is a point beyond which is too late. There is a point in life beyond which is dangerous and perhaps deadly. We look back and we see what could have been. We look back and see what maybe should have been. We see the blessing that we willingly gave away. Most of the time, most people live with the regret of what they could have seen happen, but they willingly made the decision to make sure it didn't. Yes, there are times we are literally victims of other people, but most of the time we are victims of our own selves. Provisions squandered, money that we cannot get back, relationships that have been ruined that we cannot take advantage of. One of the things that I think is important, please try to never, ever, ever burn a bridge, because you have no idea when you might need that bridge. There is a point where it's too late. I know I've said this before. This has been about now I'm running it through my head. It's been probably about 20 years ago, 18 to 20 years ago, when I got a call on had to be at least 20. I got a call from a friend about a friend and said, Doug, you need to get down here. Your friend has just told his wife and kids that he didn't want to be married anymore and he's leaving. So I left church and I jumped in a car and I drove down. It's about an hour and 20-minute drive, and popped in his house, and there are other people there, and I said, guys, it's probably better that you leave. And I had a conversation with him because I said, I know your aunt, I know your grandparents, I know your parents. His parents had recently died, and I said, I know what your mom would say. Your mom would say this. I know what your dad would say. I know what your grandma Wilma would say. I know, and I knew the family. And as I was talking, he was packing up a suitcase and was putting clothes in a garbage bag. And I think he had a garbage bag underneath an arm, a garbage bag here, and he had a suitcase here. And he goes, can you get the front door for me? And I went, no, I'm getting nothing for you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand in the middle of the door, and I'm going to talk for 2 minutes. And at the end of 2 minutes, I'm going to get out of your way. But I'm not helping with the door. And I said, here's the thing. I know it's bad, but I think this is restorable. We can redeem this. But if you choose to leave this house, I don't think it is. I don't know what's been happening before, but you need to have this plain idea that this is what this is probably going to mean. And after my 2 minutes, he did leave. He got the door himself. I wasn't going to open a door, help a door, anything else. And no, it wasn't. And it's 20 years later. There's no relationship with his son at all. There's a time when things get too late. Do I believe that when it comes to salvation with Jesus Christ, it's ever too late? No. But do I believe that we can get to the point where hearing God's voice is hard? Yes. Do I believe we get to the point where my feet of clay and my pride keep me from moving? Yes. Do I believe I get to the point where I've acted as my God long enough that I view listening to the real God as a personal threat to my self-identity? Yes. And these are sad and painful words. And I love the way this is told in the NIV. He could bring about no change of mind, even though he sought the blessing with tears. I don't know if you've ever had experience someone who's literally kind of breaking down and they're sad and they say, I know my life should get better and I see all the mistakes. Then here's what you need to do. Nope, can't do it. That was the story of my father through a lot of his last 20, 25 years. These are sad words. We as a culture trade the valuable for the cheap all the time. So my question is, what valuable thing are you trading for a cheap alternative? What thing of value do you need to reclaim in your life? What change needs to be made while there's still time? What blessing needs cultivated? What change must happen? And I think we all know. We're doing something a little different this Thanksgiving. We have a board over here. What are you thankful for? In a minute, we're going to give you a chance if you want to go and write something down. I just ask, please write on the whiteboard, not on the wall. Or you see over there, there's also little tear-off note cards. There's also little Post-it notes. Let me give you two things. Maybe on the board you can write what you're thankful for. Or you can write on a Post-it note what you're thankful for. Keep it with you so you can see it. Or perhaps you know that there's something in your life that needs to change. I'm not asking you to write it down and put it on the board for us. But maybe you can write it on a Post-it note and slide it into your wallet. Maybe you can write it on the other sheet and put it in your pocketbook or your pocket and look at it every now and then. You know what it is, and use this as a reminder. I'm going to ask the worship team if they could to come up. We're going to take just a couple minutes once they start playing for you to go up and maybe put something, and then we're going to close with prayer. You don't have to do it, but if you'd like to, while they play, we just go and write something you're thankful for. Do some of the Post-it note. In a minute, we'll do announcements and close with prayer. But why don't you stand as they play, and we'll give time on this Thanksgiving month for us to write what we're thankful for, maybe what we know we need to have God do in our hearts.